Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. Today I want to talk about failure and road to success because I do believe that the road to success is actually paved with failure. The problem is that we're always talking about entrepreneurship, about the success, about the story of everything after it worked. We see the exit, we see the success, we see the bestseller, we see the millions of billion-dollar company or the standing ovation. What we don't see and what we don't talk about is the years when nobody cared, the bad decisions, the rejection, the cash flow scares, the product that failed, or the moments when the entrepreneur wondered, what the hell am I doing? Failure to me is not the opposite of entrepreneurial success. It's actually part of it. It's part of the journey. It's part of the price of admission. The thing is that I've never heard of any entrepreneur being introduced by someone saying they nearly ran out of money 3 times, hired the wrong people, launched something nobody wanted, lost a major client, questioned every decision they'd made, and eventually figured it out. Yet that is often closer to the reality. And we confuse the result with the journey. Once someone becomes successful, we rewrite their history, or they even rewrite their history themselves. Every decision suddenly looks strategic. Every setback becomes part of the journey. Every risk looks calculated. Absolutely not. It's like if you bought a house in South Florida in 2021 and suddenly you find that your house is double 2 or 3 years later, you can always say, yeah, I timed the market, and I would call it BS. You were just lucky. So when you are actually living the risk, when you're actually living the journey, when you are an entrepreneur, you don't know how the story is going to end. And that's the difference. And there's many examples that we know of. We know about Michael Jordan, who was rejected in the high school team, and we know what he became afterward. And I always say I was successful because I failed and failed and failed. Steve Jobs, who was pushed out of Apple, company that he co-founded in 1985. Imagine, psychologically speaking, it's your baby, you're really attached, your personality is attached to the company, it's your identity. And then somebody one day said, well, we don't want you anymore. And he described that moment saying it was devastating for him. But also, he led him to build Next and Pixar. And eventually, Apple bought Next, and Jobs returned to Apple, and we know the story. And so the interesting lesson is not get fired and you'll eventually become a billionaire, but rather your biggest professional failure may not be the end of the story. You simply cannot see the next chapter yet. And I love this philosophy of thinking, bad thing, good thing, you never know. Keep going, keep working, keep focusing on your dream. And that's at the end of the road where the success lies. But failure itself doesn't make you a failure. And I think it's very important to differentiate between my business failed and I am a failure. Those are two completely different statements. Entrepreneurs often merge the two because our identity becomes wrapped up in our company. Revenue drops, I'm failing. Client leaves, I'm failing. Employee quits, I'm failing. Competitor beats us, I'm failing. No, absolutely not. Something happened. Now you have the information. What are you going to do about it? So the question is not, I'm a failure or am I a failure? The question becomes, what are you going to do with the data? What are you going to do with the information you have? And quite frankly, we can talk about many different examples of something that didn't go as planned, but the entrepreneur learned about it and actually make it a big success. One of my favorite example is Elon Musk and SpaceX. SpaceX went from 3 consecutive rocket explosions and near bankruptcy in 2008, I believe, to the biggest IPO in history. So imagine when you have your project and the first rocket explode, you're not from the space industry. I'm sure a lot of people are laughing at you. And then the second one explode, and then you have the third one, and then explode again. I mean, this story is just amazing. How every time what Elon Musk and his team learn and what type of success they've made of SpaceX today. So you can see that as a the failure, the cost of failure would be probably like a tuition. When you lose $20,000 on something that didn't work, you can look at it and said, I lost 20,000, maybe, or you could say, you know what? That teach me something that prevents me maybe from making a $500,000 mistake later on. So was that really a loss or was it the tuition to learn? I've paid both. I've paid the cheap tuition and the expensive tuition. And every entrepreneur has. And the goal is not to eliminate mistakes. That's how you learn. And quite frankly, it's impossible to eliminate all the mistakes. The goal is to stop paying the tuition for the same class twice. In other words, you can make a mistake, but don't make twice the same mistake. And recently, losing money with a company that was pretending to help me get leads and train setters and closers. And I wasted 6 months with them, and they have an amazing process and a lot of testimonials and blah, 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 with the results of 0 leads. Well, I was extremely frustrated. And trust me, if you want to know more, let me know. I'm not going to advertise for them, at the contrary. And that also taught me a lesson where I thought, you know what? I am not going to outsource that. And I hire Polar, a new head of marketing, because that's the lesson I learned from losing a substantial amount of money with people that pretend a lot of things but not deliver anything. Again, you're learning, bad thing, good thing, you never know. And I can go on with many stories. For those who know James Dyson, famously went through 5,000, if not more, prototype developing his bagless vacuum. Think about the number of prototype. It's even worse than Edison when he invented a light bulb. So that is not the point of persevering for the sake of it, okay? Because quite frankly, people would say perseverance at some stage can become stupidity. And that's one of the hardest questions when it comes to entrepreneurs is when do you stop? But grit is not blindly repeating the same thing. Grit is staying committed to your goal, staying committed to what you want to achieve. And in the meantime, instead of going to straight route, maybe you take a detour, turn left, turn right, go back to the main road. You keep the destination, but in the meantime, you know that it's not a straight line. And that's very important to remember. To me, when people say never give up, I think it's a horrible business advice. Sometimes you should absolutely give up. Give up on a bad product, give up on a bad strategy, give up on a toxic employee who might be bringing you a lot of sales, but it's creating a terrible culture. Give up on a market that does not want what you're selling. Give up on the assumptions that have been proven wrong. But don't automatically give up on the bigger mission because one approach failed. So that aspect, if you want, having grit is not being stubborn, but it's also analyzing the facts and making decision. Stubbornness would tell you this must work. It's not that. It's grit. And grit will tell you, I will figure out what works. And that's a huge difference. And so you have so many examples of failure and people learn. I'm not going to talk about Walt Disney. Everybody knows the story of Walt Disney, but that's another example. But it's also what you think about your business and when you want to start. Coming from a country and a culture where entrepreneurs are seen extremely bad, are seen as crook, are people exploiting others, and being here in America, that's just amazing. You can start anything at any age. In other words, your timeline is really your timeline and nobody else's timeline. If you think about Colonel Sanders that started Kentucky Fried Chicken when I believe he was in his 60s, so that's something very inspiring. But the problem today, more than ever, is the way that social media is describing entrepreneurship. If you look on LinkedIn or Instagram and you see posts like, I'm thrilled to announce that I've sold my business, blah, blah, blah. Usually people don't post, I'm thrilled to announce that we missed payroll projection, that our biggest salesperson resigned, that the product launch bombed, and I've spent the last 3 nights wondering whether I'm completely screwed this thing up. That's not the type of post you see on social media. And so we're comparing behind the scenes to somebody else's press release. And that's insanity for me. Don't ever look at what the others are saying about their success or not, because you never know what's happening and how they get there, more importantly. And that to me is extremely dangerous, especially for younger entrepreneur, because it creates some sort of expectation that struggle, it means that you're actually doing something wrong. Absolutely not. Struggle is part of the journey. It just simply means that you are building a business. So don't pay too much attention to the social media. Focus on what you are doing and learn about what is important in the analysis of what you're doing. And the cycle should be you fail, you analyze, you learn, you adjust, you try again. And not you fail, you complain, you repeat, and you fail. So there are 5 important questions that one should be asking themselves if the things are not going the way they would hope for. The first one, what actually happened? And don't become emotional or find excuses. It's just the facts. What actually happened? The second question, what was within my control? It's your business, it's your decision. You own the story, you own the decision, you own the process. The third one, what did I believe that turned out to be wrong? It's the assumption. And adapt those assumptions and correct them, understand what you would have done differently. So that the fourth question is, what will I do differently the next time? That's the learning part. And then finally, and most importantly, what system needs to change so this doesn't repeat? That's how you scale your business. And so I just want to share with you 3 personal failure and what I learned from it. The first one, I sold my business for the first time in 2009. I was extremely happy. I was breaking the solitude of the entrepreneur. I was joining a holding company that was invested in a completely different industry. They were going to grow that industry by buying other business in that industry, and I was going to grow by buying one agency per country and build a European agency. That was great. That was the belief. Besides the financial aspect, which was great, it was a group of friends. Again, I was breaking the solitude of the entrepreneur. And actually, what happened 2 years later is that the other company from the other industry, which was already existing when they bought me, actually went belly up because the inventory was extremely badly calculated. And I believe as well the seller of that business was absolutely a crook, and the inventory has not been evaluated the right way. Long story short, I had to buy myself back because I was the only business which was profitable in this group. So, was that a failure? The project in itself, yes. But it taught me a lot about trust, taught me a lot about not necessarily believing people because they had a past success, because you never know. But at the end of the day, I never regret it because I learned, and I found, thanks to that, and without going into too many details, my new business partner with whom I develop my corporate event agency. which was a blessing in itself. So again, bad thing, good thing, you never know. Second example is that moment that I really, really doubt myself. We back in 1998, 2 years after I started my first business, and I have a client asking me to provide him with a full program and 30 tickets to the semifinal and the final of a largest soccer tournament in the world in Paris. And I trust a woman who was also a director of a very well-known professional association who pretended that she had the ticket. I trusted her. We wired an outrageous amount of money. I found out I had the feeling afterwards that she didn't have the ticket. And for a month, I was doubting myself, that I trust that person, that my business was 2 years young and I was going to go belly up. And again, a story for another time. And we were one of the two agencies in Belgium that actually delivered all the tickets to the client. And we ended up with a magnificent program with the semifinal, with the final, with the police escort in Paris on the day of the final, and on the Friday, 2 days before the final, the concert of the three tenors under the Eiffel Tower. But I can tell you, that's the end. It's beautiful end. And for 6 weeks, I couldn't sleep. I went to see every single person I could in Belgium and France. I had all my energy spent in that. And I was really doubting myself and said, maybe this is not going to work. But I never stopped until I found a solution and we had an amazing outcome. And the third example that I share earlier on in this podcast is when actually I hired this company that pretends to bring you a lot of leads, that has a lot of testimonial on their website, has an amazing selling process in which I failed, quite frankly. The results a month later was actually zero leads, waste of time, changing CRM. I mean, long story short, really, really, really wasted my time, wasted my money. But afterwards, I decided I was going to hire someone internally. So again, bad thing, good thing, you never know. I'm not going to thank them, but the outcome was great, if you want, with the decision I took. And it taught me a very valuable lesson. So, as we're getting close to the end of this episode, I just want to share with you what I think is the real equation for success, for progress, and it's based on four elements. You need ambition, you need failure, you need learning, and you need grit. Take the ambition away, and you're simply surviving. Take the failure away, and you're probably not taking enough risk. Take the learning away, and you're just repeating mistakes, and take the grit away and you quit before compounding has time to work. So you need all four: ambition, failure, learning, and grit. And so the thing is not if you're building a business that is going to be easy. I can tell you that if you're building a business, you might have success, but no one can promise you success. What anyone can certainly promise you is that you will fail. Something will not work. Something will disappoint you. Some of the decision that you will make, you will regret them. You will lose client you thought you couldn't afford to lose. You will launch things that nobody buys. And there will probably be days when, quite frankly, you wonder, why did I ever decided to start a business? Why did I decided to become an entrepreneur? And I had the same with the last venture that I have been building, this coaching business and helping people in the meetings and event industry, including the Eric AI. I love it. And I always say that I will never start a business from scratch. And here I am again. So that's the journey that you need to enjoy. And so the question is not whether those moments of doubt will come, they will come. The question is when they arrive, when you're faced with those moments, is how you're going to react. Because at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is not about avoiding getting knocked down. It's about becoming very, very good at getting back up and a little smarter every time. That's great. And that is the real road to success. And this is my wish for you. And if we can help you in any way at Even Business Formula, of course, you let us know. But I can tell you, being an entrepreneur is the greatest thing that you can do in business. It's not for everyone. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, there is no better country than the United States of America to do that. We'll see you at the next industry conference. And in the meantime, I'll see you next week for the next episode of the Business of Meetings podcast. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping even business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.